It is now my pleasure to introduce our beloved Reverend Jeffrey Colbrook, who always brings lots of love and lots of goodness and lots of good guests
Oh,
to introduce this next part of the show. Welcome back, Reverend Jeffrey.
hey, Omashar, I mean, I love your music, but I got off high on that one. Of course, with Vox, my body, I just watched my body, I go,
Right. I know that
whoa. So yeah,
the
yeah,
ultimate body watch. But the
yeah.
trick is in the headphones.
So I go, oh, look what my body's doing with her music. I go, that's beautiful, Vox. Thank you. And yeah, so um, I'm excited that Scott, we worked with Scott to give us this opportunity. I had a grandniece who said, asked Uncle Jeffrey, what's what do you know about death? And I thought, oh, can I send her? Well, I've been working and known my dear friend, Doctor Dr. Dave DeSanto for quite some time, and he makes this incredible presentation we're going to get to see tonight. I said, if only I had that on uh, a presentation that I could share with her. So Scott said, okay, let's go ahead and do it. Now, like most of us, we all have had our awakening experience. In Dr. Dave's case, came from a whole scientific background. And then, of course, his came through meeting his wife, Mary, who's an amazing love energy. And that made him, what's going on? So he went to investigate and come up with a beautiful presentation about the left brain science that he has a huge background in, all kinds of degrees in sciences he studied, just like Dr. Cat. But both of them had, my dear friend Dr. Cat's case, she had experience. She goes, all right, I'm a scientist. Where am I going to find the science to explain my experience? And of course, she ended up over with us at the Resident Science Foundation and the International Space Federation. Has been a huge part of that community. So, synchronicity wise, we came together to make this presentation for my, so that uh, uh, we could share it with people. Now, of course, a lot of this information is for the choir, but how about having this to put together? So, like Bailey, my niece, I can send it to her and have all this information to help her go through her search, because a lot of people are waking up and to this higher consciousness, this non-physical realm. And so we have this wonderful presentation that we're going to be sharing with everyone here tonight. And thank you, Dr. Dave, for coming in and offering this presentation. And of course, Dr. Cat will be joining us as we go through the presentation as well. So let's get started. Let's get it on the road here. So that's my dear friend and amazing person. Oh, you should always have his book, which he'll probably bring up later, is amazing. It's a metaphysical Bible here, divinely touched. It's got all kinds of resources, all kinds of information. I highly recommend Divinely Touched. So let's go do the presentation for everyone here so we can be able to share it. Thank you, Scott, for allowing this to come together.
Absolutely. And anything else you want to say about Dr. Dave as introduction?
That he's brilliant, and that he and Mary, of course, they've done this presentation like all over Spirit Fest and stuff like that. So this is um, a great opportunity for us to get to see all the information and the quality of the comprehensiveness that he's put together.
Great. All right. Thank you, Reverend Jeffrey, and welcome, Dr. Dave.
Oh, thank you again, Scott, for having me. Last time, I don't know if you recall, it was a while ago.
Yeah, you were on with your partner, Mary.
Yes, and because we were talking a little bit more about her journey and how this all came about. And actually, this is how this presentation came about because of Mary's experience and what happened to her, where she was having a spiritual awakening. And as Reverend Jeffrey was saying, again, thank you for setting this up, Reverend Jeffrey. Um, my background was I started out in science education and then became a school psychologist. And my PhD dissertation turned into my first book, Holistic Mental Health. And again, it was more of like a comparative science type background, which I know Dr. Cat can appreciate, because I used to teach biochemistry myself. And all that changed, and I went on more of a spiritual track or journey along with my wife Mary, because of what happened to her. So this presentation, as Reverend Jeffrey just said, is really comes out of what happened to her, and then how we made sense of all that, and that's how we wrote Divinely Touched: Transform Your Life, which chronicles what happened to Mary. But then in the second half, I get into I get into the science of proving what happened to her actually was in fact real. So that's where this whole slideshow comes into play. And we've been doing this probably for the last 10 years all over the country.
Dr. Dave, there appears to be something else that's on your desktop that's causing a big black bar to go across. So
Yeah, this
if you,
bar here.
if you,
It's usually if you have it optimized for video, you need to take the optimize off. Then very often it'll get rid of those black boxes, gray boxes.
Okay, they're still there, the black boxes?
one of them went away, and there's two smaller ones that are still there.
Mhm.
Because we want to have the complete experience. Oh,
Yeah,
it's gotten bigger. It's growing. Kill it before it multiplies.
because I have that at the bottom here.
As he said, if you stop the screen share for a moment, go back into screen share and do not optimize the video.
Okay. Let me try that.
Yay! Thank you. Perfect.
That's better?
It's perfect.
Okay. So the name of this presentation that the three of us actually put together and have been talking about the last few weeks is Positive Proof of Our Eternal Souls in the Spirit Dimension, which Reverend Jeffrey just mentioned. Uh, Again, we could thank his grand niece as well for putting this out on the awakening world. But it really comes down to, how do you prove that our souls are eternal, that there is a spirit dimension? And if we have a little disclaimer here, Einstein said, "Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds." Because what I'm presenting here tonight may, be a little bit different from people's religious or uh, technical upbringings, and it may be revolutionary for some. But again, I think, Scott, a lot of your viewers know a lot of what I'm going to be presenting. What I did was just kind of put it into a format where they can give this to someone who says, well, how can you prove anything? How do you really know that our souls are eternal? How can you prove what happens when you die? Or how do we know that reincarnation is real? One of my personal heroes, Dr. Ray Moody, who wrote his latest book, Proof of Life After Life, and I'll get in a little more detail about Ray Moody, which I'm sure, again, a lot of your viewers know who he is. He said, proof is a rational means of leading everyone who follows it to the same logical conclusion. All right, so that's a great statement. But again, how do you prove something? How do we get to that same logical conclusion? Well, I've realized after great thought for long periods of time what exactly is proof. And if we look at what is proof, proof is, I find, is usually based on three things. It can be based on research and data, historical or cross-cultural evidence, or personal experience. And every time I do this presentation, I ask the audience, okay, what else? Is there another way you prove something to yourself? And what I usually find is it really comes down to one of these three categories. This is how we prove something to ourselves. Right now, science typically is based on observable information, replicated results and data, and it formulates principles and theories. But traditionally, if you go to a science professional, and I'm not talking about someone like Kat, Dr. Kat, I'm talking about someone who may be a medical professional or a traditional scientist, and you ask them, well, can you prove psychic phenomenon? They'll tell you what things like psychic phenomenon can't be replicated. It can't be proven, and it can't be seen or measured. But if we stop and think again, there's lots of things in science that can fall into these categories as well. For example, does science explain unseen forces? Right? How about things like air? We all believe air is real, or wind, moving air, gravity. Hard to see gravity, but we all believe it's real. Electricity, things like radio waves. Anyone not believe it's radio waves are real? But again, that's something you can't see. Electromagnetic forces or quantum energy. Quantum energy is pretty much theoretical. It does explain how things interact. And what about thought energy? Can that be measured? Well, certainly, if we look at thought energy, that's easily measurable because we can measure our brain waves. And based on our activity, we go from active thought, which are gamma waves, down to delta waves, which are deep sleep or dream. Subtle energy fields can also be measured. Okay, in subtle energy fields, Seaman Carillion back in the 1940s developed a way of measuring through Carillion photography these energy fields around the body. So that can even be seen. And again, I believe everything is energy. Now, quantum physics also can connect to consciousness. Because again, our key statement here is, can we prove that consciousness is real? Our consciousness existing outside the body. And quantum theory states things like light is electromagnetic energy that's composed of particles and waves. Matter can be converted to energy, and therefore energy can be converted to matter. This is, again, Einstein's famous theory. And again, most people are familiar with the first part of that, matter converted to energy. That's we take matter like wood, coal, gas, oil, and we burn that produces energy. But this formula also states that energy can be converted into matter. And this is, I believe, what Dr. Kat was talking about in Nissan's information that he's trying to put together, getting energy from the field. Quantum theory also says subatomic particles can transmit information across dimensions. And the universe is connected subatomically. And again, a great film on that is Nissim Harriman's Connected Universe that came out a few years ago. For Reverend Jeffrey, if you want to comment further on that. But
Well, yeah, I would like to add a little bit to that. That movie, the movie, The Connected Universe, has one very important aspect to it, and that I'd like is that space is not empty. And I think most of us were brought up with the concept that space was empty, and it's anything but empty. So we really need to take that whole idea that space is empty and put it over there with the earth is flat and that the sun goes around the earth. And it's not, so it has all that information, infinite information is in space. And that's the key, because all the things we're talking about and Dr. Dave is sharing, where is all this, where can this be? Where is heaven? Where is all this connectivity of the spirit world? And there's no problem with a unified model of physics, because we have that, now have the field back, the space that contains everything. So I just wanted to point out for people who still have that idea the space is empty, put it away with the flat earth concept. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah. And the movie, Reverend Jeffrey, is that available on YouTube now, or?
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but you just Google it, of course, and you can find the movie The Connected Universe. I find that's a great place to get started. You have it's done a great job. Malcolm Carter did a wonderful job putting that together. It's a little dated, but it's very pertinent.
Yeah, and Patrick Stewart of Star Trek fame narrates it. So consciousness, then, human thought is composed of energy that can transcend space, time, dimensions, and is eternal energy. And again, if you look at some of the main theories in quantum theory, things of like non-locality, and again, I try not to get too technical in my presentation, but quantum theory supports that consciousness is real, and it can transmit through dimensions and time. And along those lines, we're very limited as far as our physical bodies. The human eye can see frequencies between 430 and 770 theta hertz, while our ears detect sounds between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. These ranges represent only a small portion of the entire spectrum of sound, light, meaning that there's so much happening around us that we can't see or hear. And Einstein even said that everything is energy. That's all there is. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. So how can we prove, again, conscious energy exists outside the body? Well, there's lots of ways. And if we talk about things like out-of-body experiences, which are two basic categories of out-of-body experiences, are near-death experiences and astral projection. And if we look at the historical records, these concepts go as far back as recorded history. Aristotle, over 2,000 years ago, talked about being able to actually project out of his body. Buddhist and India's texts all talk about out-of-body experiences. But if we look at recent documentation, there's a lot of information out there. Sylvia Mullyon talks about back in 1929 how to actually project your consciousness. And again, this is like vivid dreams, or being able to project your consciousness in active dreaming, lucid dreaming, very similar, being consciously awake while you're in that state. We look at Bernard Spalding, Life and Teachings of the Masters. I believe Dr. Cat talks a lot about this as well. He wants to, I think she might come in towards the end and elaborate on that. Ray Moody, who I alluded to earlier, he is the person that came up with the term near-death experiences. And Ray Moody is a psychiatrist, and also he has a PhD in philosophy. And back in the early 70s, he started being aware of patients, telling them of vivid conscious experiences while they were clinically dead. And after he started collecting these experiences, he came up with the term near-death experience. So a near-death experience is, again, when we do these expos, I'm always amused because people will come up to me and tell me they've had a near-death experience. And their near-death experience was a situation where they're at a traffic light and the light turns green. They proceed, and a car runs the red light from the other direction. They have to jam on their brakes. So that was their near-death experience. No, that was an almost death experience. A near-death experience is when you are clinically dead, your consciousness leaves the body, but you are aware of what's going on. And then you decide to come back. So Ray Moody talked about a number of patients having that experience in his first book, Life After Life. His latest book in 2023 was Proof of Life After Life. A contemporary of his, Dr. Ken Ring, also investigated and wrote a book called Lessons from the Light, talking about the commonalities of people having near-death experiences. Another example of consciousness existing outside the body is Rupert Sheldrake's experiments in observations of animal consciousness and their ability to tell what's going on in very controlled environments. And he talks a lot about animals doing that. Ingo Swann was investigated by the CIA because he was able to remote view, project his consciousness to different areas and see what's actually going on. And obviously back in, I guess, in the early 70s, the CIA thought that could be advantageous. Dr. Dean Radin wrote a book called The Conscious Universe. And he looked at, in his book, The Conscious Universe, he looked at a meta-analysis study of over 300 different studies of consciousness, things like ESP, remote viewing, remote viewing, ESP, telekinesis, all these different things he called psych. And he, in this meta-analysis study of over the last 100 years, he concluded with the certainty of 10 million to 1 that consciousness can exist outside the body. Psychic phenomenon is real. So that was a great book to, again, prove that consciousness can exist outside the body. Jeffrey Long, he collected over 1,600 testimonies of near-death experiences in his book, Evidence of Afterlife. And he also founded the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. Now, I think if you go to his foundation, he's up into 3,000 or 4,000 different testimonies. Nita Morjani, and in her book, and Eben Alexander, talk about their personal experiences of their near-death experiences. And then PMH Atwater, in her book, Future Memory, talks about children reporting their near-death experiences. And she really does a great job of connecting science and quantum physics to consciousness in her book, Future Memory. In Forever Angels, again, she elaborates on several thousand cases of children having near-death experiences and their testimonies. And again, a lot of you are familiar with Ty Dickens and the telepathy tapes. So that's another example of consciousness existing outside the body and clinical studies proving that it's real. Another example of consciousness existing outside the body is reincarnation. And again, I love when people say, well, I don't really believe in reincarnation because there's no proof. What they're really saying is, I don't have any information. Okay, so here's some information. And again, reincarnation, if you look at religious texts, it's in Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity texts going back to the beginning of recorded time. And even in Christianity, most of the testimonies of reincarnation in the Bible were stricken in the year 325 by a Roman emperor, Constantine, because he didn't want people to believe that they had multiple lives. He wanted more control over the current life. But they missed one reference in Luke 9:19. It talks about John the Baptist being Elijah in a previous life. So even in the Bible, there's a reference to reincarnation. If we look at more Eastern beliefs, they believe in reincarnation because of energy conservation. Your soul energy goes from lifetime to lifetime, and that's kind of the basis of karma. We look at recent documentation. Edgar Cayce was called the sleeping prophet, and in the early 1900s, he would put himself into a trance and diagnose people's illnesses. And oftentimes, it was through past life trauma that he uncovered that their current illnesses, and again, proving that they had a previous life. And he didn't believe in reincarnation until he started listening to some of his recordings, because back in the 30s and 40s, I believe, at the end of his life, they started recording his session. Dr. Even Stevens of the University of Virginia, the Department of Processual Studies, investigated children reporting instances where they had other lives, or they talked about living in other places or having other parents or other names. And he investigated over 3,000 cases, proving that what these children were saying was in fact real, that they had lived in previous lives. Dr. Brian Weiss, is a noted psychiatrist who regressed one patient into a previous life through hypnotherapy, and uncovered about 70 past lives of this one patient. And every time he uncovered a life, he kind of uncovered another ailment, and she was getting better and better. And again, he had no belief in reincarnation until he started using hypnotherapy to regress patients into previous lives. Messages from the Masters was after 20 years of regressing hundreds of patients. And again, he talks about commonalities in the afterlife. Michael Newton, also a psychotherapist using hypnotherapy, did the same thing. And he talks particularly about the time between lives in his book, Destiny of Souls, which is extremely interesting about what happens in the spirit realm when we transition. And again, if we look at another scientific controlled study by a German researcher from the University of Kassel, shown that the chest area of an average person emits 20 photons of light per second. Someone who meditates on their heart chakra in center sends love and light to others, emits an amazing 100,000 photons per second. That's 5,000 times more than the average human being. And numerous studies have also shown that these photons are infused with loving and healing intent. The frequency and vibration increases to the point where it can literally transmit, excuse me, let me get out of here. Vibration increases to the point where it can heal disease and transform negative events. Okay. So again, if we look at, can consciousness exist outside the body? In other words, what happens when we die? And if we look at proof, historical, cross-cultural, replicated results, and even personal experience, which I know a lot of your viewers have had near-death experiences and personal experiences. It all comes down to that research supports that consciousness and phenomena exist in out-of-body and near-death experiences in reincarnation. There's thousands of studies that have shown human thought and in ego and after physical body continues after the physical body dies. Quantum physics explains how information and thought can transcend space, time, and dimensions. So what does this all mean? If we look at all the research and data, we can say that consciousness can exist outside the body and is eternal energy. People do possess things like ESP, telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition. Again, Dean Radin's book really goes into detail on this. Thoughts are energy. What you project, you attract. That study from the University of Kassel, positively or negatively. Our consciousness is eternal energy, and we are just having a brief physical experience here on Earth. And quantum physics supports energy is eternal. Spirit dimension is just on a different frequency and can affect our life physically or mentally. And again, this presentation is kind of a psychic phenomenon impact on our life 101. When my wife Mary gets here and starts talking, we get into graduate school on how the spirit dimension really affects people's lives. But you do have spirit guides, and your soul group travels with you from lifetime to lifetime. You can track your earthly experiences and challenges prior to coming into this life in order to grow your soul. And everything in your life is by your design in order to grow your soul. This is life's purpose. And a lot of times people have trouble with that last thing because they'd rather blame God for the things that happen to them. But a 5D truth is that every soul is on a different stage of evolution. Okay. And the evolutionary gap between you and your loved ones can be thousands of millions of years in soul development. Trying to help other humans awaken to deeper truths can be like trying to teach a baby how to read books. You simply can't make others understand more than they are ready to receive. And what you can do is focus on your spiritual growth and raise your vibration and let your energy do the work and impact the world. Okay. And again, I find this statement to be very true because a lot of times, as Reverend Jeffrey mentioned earlier, there's still a lot of flat earthers out there. Well, the earth must be flat because when I look out, all I see is flat earth. Well, again, when you talk to people and they tell you, well, there's really no proof to life after death or reincarnation. Well, again, they don't have any information, or maybe they don't want any information. So it could be that they're at a different level of soul growth than yours. And kind of in summary, you are a soul wearing a human disguise. You are here to remember who you are. What you love is the key to your purpose. Your challenges are meant to trigger your growth. There are no mistakes, only lessons. And in terms of resources, as I said, a graduate school resource would be the book Reverend Jeffrey mentioned, our book initially. This is all about what happened to Mary, how she was attacked by the spirit dimension, and then went on a healing journey all over the country. I rewrote this book. The second half of the book, I connect all the dots using science, history, and research. So that's Divinely Touched, Transform Your Life. Other great references, Dean Radin's book, The Conscious Universe, The Scientific Truth of Psychic Phenomenon, which I talked about earlier. Ray Moody's books, Life After Life and Proof of Life After Life. Dr. Ken Ring's Lessons from the Light. Nina Morjani, again, she talks about her near-death experiences. I like Eben Alexander's book because he was a neuro surgeon, and in his book he talks about what happened to him. He went into had spinal meningitis, went into a coma for a week, and at that point they noticed that he had no brain activity at all. They were getting ready to pull the plug when he awoke and talked about his near-death experiences of going to the spirit realm, meeting deceased relatives, and then coming back. So he talks about, again, two things was that being a neurosurgeon, he talks about they have no idea where consciousness is or where it comes from, and the fact that he had no brain waves but was having this near-death experience. That was interesting. I mentioned Brian Weiss's book earlier and Michael Newton's book as well, and P.H. Otter's book Future Memory, and her book Forever Angels. And of course, Kai Dickens' telepathy tapes talks a lot about autistic children being able to consciously connect. So in summary, again, you are a commander over this time, space, reality. Your consciousness is the key that holds it together. Okay, so that was in the nutshell the presentation. And after that, we welcome any questions with Reverend Jeffrey and Dr. Cat.
Yeah, and Dr. Cat, is there anything you'd like to add off the bat?
Sure. I think, one way to understand this is if you think about the dream state, the more you contemplate on how our dreams work, the more you'll start to understand how this dream actually works, this physical reality dream. So when we're in our dream, we think we're that dream self. We think we're the dream body, right? But we're really the entire container, all the dream forms, the objects in the dream, even the empty space that we experience in the dream, all of that is occurring inside our consciousness, right? But we think we're the dream self until we wake up. Well, the same thing is actually happening here. So even the empty space in your dream was your mind, right? And this is true also here too. And so now, why doesn't it feel that way? But well, when you were in the dream, it didn't feel that way either, right? In the dream, you thought you were the dream body. And in fact, you can experience pain. Has anyone experienced pain in their dreams? I have. I've experienced pain in the dream. So you have senses while you're in the dream state. But all of that is just an illusion. And that's the case for this physical reality too. I was actually able to experience that when I had my Kundalini rising experience. And just before I exploded into light, I had an experience where I became weightless and my whole entire body felt just like it felt weightless. Everything felt weightless. And I felt completely at one with the space of the room that I was in. And I could see that everything in the room, all the material objects and even space had like some texture to it. But I could see that all the material objects, the walls, the desk, the bed, was just like light particles. So what I always thought about after that experience was, why was my state of being affecting what the room was doing? Right? I always wondered, like, I felt weightless, and then I could see my body, but it felt no different than the space. And I could see everything was just light suspended in space. So what we call material is just energy. It's just light. And I always wondered, why was my state of being, how did my state of being affect that whole room? Well, it's because all of this is occurring inside our mind. So when my state of consciousness shifted, when my state of awareness shifted, it affected the entire room because it really is an illusion. Now, this is the science of Vedic science, Vedanta, which is what my Vedanta teacher used to say was, it's the knowledge that ends the search for knowledge, because they've really got this down to a science to describe using our like unexamined logic of our experience. So things we just haven't thought about before, but to prove to us that we're pure consciousness, so that the dream state and the waking state, this waking state, are really the same. And that the fundamental reality is just us as pure consciousness. So what happens, so then I started studying the science, and what I found is that so as we change our state of being, so like in meditation, that's why our brain waves are changing, right? So we change our state of being, the physical body is then affected, right? So we go into meditation, we have different brainwave frequencies, and the brain behaves differently, right? When we think something, we like if we think if we're nervous about something, we're going to start secreting adrenaline and cortisol, right? So the physical is always responding to what we believe in any given moment. So as we start to pay attention and understand what this reality is, you actually get to experience more of the dreamlike qualities of reality. And you start to see that you're really not separate from anything. And actually everything is an appearance inside you, consciousness. Oh, Scott, you're on mute.
That's beautiful. I put into the chat box because you and I have talked about this. I totally believe this is a dream world. And just a reminder of that wonderful nursery rhyme, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 for life, live dream.
What a dream.
You know,
Yeah.
and isn't it amazing how that early children's rhyme is probably the most accurate assessment of what
Mhm.
life is.
Yeah, it's really our state of consciousness. So what is a state of consciousness? It's a state of understanding who you are and your relationship to reality. So as we start to get more and more present, that one of the keys here is getting into your heart, going into your heart, because that's really the fundamental reality, is that the consciousness, the seat of our soul is right here in the heart. And so, but as you start dropping into that, relaxing more and more and more, all of these things start to make sense. Everything starts to make sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring a couple things. Dr. Dave, your website is not pulling up. www.divinelytouched has some sort of a problem. So you might want to check it and see if there's something we can do differently, because we definitely want to show people how they can reach you.
My email is Dr. Dave D. I could put that one, put that in the chat.
Pop that in the chat box. And I'm going to bring up our other guests as we kind of roll into our Q&A portion. So here is Ashleigh, and here is Vox. And if anybody in the audience has questions, this is the time to put it in the chat box. Or if any of our presenters have a question for another presenter, because that's always kind of fun when that comes up too. So if any of you have thoughts, questions, or just Ashleigh, Vox, anything you'd like to share in reflection to what we just saw from Kat and Dr. Dave.
I mean, that was just a phenomenal presentation, and there's a lot of resources there for those who are sorry, for those who are watching. I mean, you can take any one of those resources you shared and, follow that stream, expand your consciousness. I thought it was wonderful. And Vox's performance was amazing. Kat shared amazing information. I mean, everybody here, this really is an all-star team, but I would expect nothing less from you, Scott.
Well, thank you. Thank
You
you.
know, how amazing could if everyone knew they couldn't die. Our dear friend Damien Brinkley, yeah, can't die. Because and if you know you're your soul, how does that raise the consciousness of the planet if we're all walking around as souls and not bodies?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
So I want to say thanks to Dave. He was being kind. He put my name on that presentation. I came in on the very end. So that's all him and Jeffrey. I didn't do anything.
it's all Dave's work. I helped him. I kept pointing to the Seam Harriman for his science, but he's done a beautiful job. And yes, thank you, Dr. Dave.
Yes,
Thank you, Dr. Dave. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And again, thanks, Reverend Jeffrey, for connecting people.
Absolutely.
Because you are the connected universe.
Yeah.